Wild West is a dangerous place. It ain't meant for city slickers like yourself. It's hot, dry, and harsh out here, boy. Especially out here in California.
Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Afro Avenger Music Reviews, and today's album we're going to look at is My Wild West by Lissie. It was released February 12th of this year, 2016. Some chart information, it peaked number 171 on the US Billboard 200, and it was released on the labels Lion Boy and 30 Tigers, as well as Cooking Vinyl, and its singles were Hero, Don't You Give Up On Me, and Daughters. So without further ado, let's get this started. This would be American singer-songwriter Lissie's third official album after Catching a Tiger and Back to Forever, and this album is actually her first release on an independent label as opposed to releasing her albums on a major label. This is the first and only album by her that I have listened to, but after this one I might just have to listen to the rest of her work. Much of the music on this album reflects styles of indie folk, indie rock, and country music, whether it be the echoing guitars, the guitar-piano combos, or Lissie's vocals. Her voice is actually quite nice and enjoyable to listen to, very light, and it floats very nicely over the instrumentals. Several times in the album, the tracks kind of switch up styles, one track being kind of indie rock popish, and the next giving off much more of a glaring country folkish vibe. It's really nice as it adds a bit of variance throughout the album, especially with it only being 12 tracks. The intro to the album is My Wild West Overture before going into the first official track, Hollywood, which has kind of a minimalist, almost Sia-esque style, but great instrumentation with its blend of strings and piano. Actually, a lot of the tracks on here contain kind of a minimalist, very echoey style. This is further shown in the following track, which is the title track, Wild West. The style follows in the same vein as the previous track, but having more of a pop rock edge and more aggressive vocals. Really, the first track to show any signs of the country side of this album is Hero, which I thought was a really cool track. You can clearly hear the twangy guitars and what sounds like a steel lap guitar. This, along with other country-oriented tracks like Stay, Together or Apart, and Shroud, really add to the idea of the Wild West theme of the album. Of course, there's an obvious connection between Wild West and country music and cowboys and everything, and the country-influenced tracks give this album's title much more weight. Now, of course, not all of the tracks on here are completely country-filled, such as the indie pop track Don't You Give Up On Me, which has a thumping bass drum going on, and certainly not being as dark or distant-sounding as tracks like Together or Apart, even from a vocal standpoint. Despite the title of this album and the country-influenced tracks, this album isn't actually about the literal Wild West of the 18th and 19th century. Really, it's Lissie living in her own Wild West, in other words, life. And even though I say that, she actually is from the West, and she talks about this on tracks like Hero. She's from Illinois, but moved out west to Colorado when she became an adult, and then to California. The track Wild West itself actually came out of Lissie's dissatisfaction with the major label music industry. Basically, she wants to do what she wants to do with her music. She doesn't want to be given orders on what to do with the music that she writes, nor does she care if she writes a major hit. She just wants to express herself through the music in whatever fashion she sees fit. This is exemplified by the line, "There's safety in numbers, I guess, but I'm going rogue in the wild, wild west." In other words, she's breaking away from major labels in a world where it seems like the only way to become a popular artist is by being on a major label like Capitol, Atlantic, Def Jam, Sony Music, or Columbia, which she was actually a member of, and she released her first 2 albums on that label. She's saying that she's going rogue by doing all this, all for the sake of expressing herself in any way she wants with no restrictions. The track Stay deals with loneliness and how it seems like everyone just leaves her, and she's upset by the fact that nobody ever seems to stay with her for very long. Now, Daughters actually has a rather interesting backstory. This track was inspired by Lissie watching the documentary Pray the Devil Back to Hell, which is about Liberian women taking a stand for gender equality. So this track has kind of a feminist message celebrating women, not just the daughters, but the mothers as well, saying things like, "They're fierce as fire, sweet as fruit," and asking, "Will there be peace?" Go for a Walk is kind of your typical take a moment and breathe and can't let my life pass me by kind of track. Lissie talks about going for a walk, smelling the grass, and reflecting on her life. Several of the tracks actually talks about several places that she's lived in, one of them being Hollywood, which I believe is actually about her getting all she can stand from Hollywood, as she talks about leaving the city and going back home, most likely to Illinois where she's from. Another is Hero, which chronicles her life out west and all the personal struggles of living there, and the final is Ojai, which is another city in California, another track where she talks about leaving the city. Overall, this is a pretty solid album. I definitely enjoyed it, and I think it makes a good addition to this year's album lineup. Much of it is just her finding her place in life, leaving a major label and obtaining creative freedom, as well as leaving the West and moving back home. The music was alright, perhaps not the most inspired, but the blend of country with indie rock and pop was pretty nice. The lyrics were pretty clear-cut, not difficult to understand on the first listen at all. I think what made this album a whole lot better was Lissie's vocals, as she is indeed a wonderful singer, but the instrumentals themselves weren't anything to brag about, really. Nothing I haven't heard before on other albums. Regardless, I definitely recommend you give this album a listen, and if you're into indie folk, country pop, indie rock, indie pop, this album is for you. That does it for this another album review. Thank you all for watching. I hope you all enjoyed, and if you did enjoy, please hit that like button, also subscribe if you want to see more, and if there's a song or an album that you want to see reviewed on this channel, leave a comment down below, or check out my Facebook or my Twitter. The links are in the description. Anyways, thank you all again. I will see you all in the next video. So long.